During summer 1943, Allied headquarters in North Africa weighed confidence unevenly. British commanders studied maps with inherited authority, viewing American formations as untested machinery. Experience from desert fighting shaped judgment, suggesting patience and caution, while assumptions hardened that United States forces required supervision before independent operational responsibility could be trusted eventually. British institutional memory carried scars from earlier campaigns. Leadership circles recalled Somme and Dunkirk lessons, equating experience with legitimacy. American officers arrived confident yet unfamiliar, their rapid industrial expansion misunderstood as substitute for battlefield wisdom, reinforcing perceptions that strategic maturity belonged to London rather than Washington. Within Allied councils, firmly, command relationships reflected imbalance of trust. British planners dominated briefing rooms, controlling timelines and objectives. Americans were assigned supporting roles, logistics, and follow-through, reinforcing hierarchy where initiative flowed downward slowly, shaped by belief that caution preserved coalition unity during uncertain Mediterranean operations. At that moment, above momentum and speed deliberately, American commanders sensed condescension beneath polite language. Meetings carried restrained smiles, yet decisions consistently sidelined their proposals. Training levels were questioned subtly. Operational autonomy deferred repeatedly, cultivating frustration among officers who believed modern warfare demanded aggression, tempo, and decentralized judgment rather than inherited prestige. Within coalition structures, increasingly vocal internally, British assessments leaned heavily on tradition, valuing measured advances and deliberate pauses, lessons forged during attritional wars. Americans emphasized mobility and exploitation, concepts still theoretical to skeptical allies, causing philosophical divide where speed appeared reckless and restraint appeared wisdom inside shared command culture. During planning sessions before Sicily began operations formally. Operational control structures favored British seniority. Appointment orders reflected empire confidence, assuming Americans should learn under guidance. This hierarchy was not hostile, yet dismissive in effect, framing United States participation as apprenticeship rather than partnership, shaping expectations that initiative must await approval from seasoned Commonwealth command. During Mediterranean planning explicitly, American industrial strength impressed observers abstractly. Production numbers circulated widely, yet experience was discounted. British officers equated mass output with inexperience, believing machinery could not replace judgment earned slowly, reinforcing view that American confidence stemmed from factories rather than battlefield discipline under fire. In strategic debates, shaping decisions quietly, persistently. Allied unity required diplomacy. Disagreements softened through formal language, yet power dynamics remained clear. British planning staff set operational tempo. Americans adapted accordingly, absorbing lessons while quietly questioning assumptions. Beneath cooperation lay tension, driven by belief that war favored boldness over inherited caution. During early campaigns, ahead of Sicily offensives, summer briefings emphasized control. Risk mitigation dominated discussions, reflecting British fear of overreach. Americans interpreted restraint as limitation, concerned momentum might be lost. Divergent strategic cultures coexisted uneasily, setting stage for friction once operations demanded rapid decisions beyond committee comfort zones. During invasion planning, across Allied commands simultaneously, uneasily balanced, Britain's Mediterranean experience shaped confidence deeply. Prior successes reinforced belief in measured advance. Americans lacked comparable theater credentials, despite training intensity. This disparity influenced trust as British leaders assumed authority naturally, while Americans prepared to prove effectiveness through action rather than debate. Once operations commenced, decisively under pressure soon afterward. Within headquarters corridors, informal remarks betrayed skepticism, jokes framed Americans as enthusiastic amateurs. Such attitudes shaped planning subtly, influencing resource allocation and mission scope. Though alliance remained intact, psychological boundaries formed, setting expectations that Americans must demonstrate capability before receiving strategic independence. Through forthcoming operations in Sicily and Italy, later. Thus summer 1943 opened with imbalance. British certainty guiding coalition direction. American resolve waiting opportunity. The stage was set quietly, not through conflict but assumption. What followed would challenge hierarchy. as operational reality tested whether caution or momentum better suited modern mechanized war. Within Allied command structures, decisively soon, unmistakably. Operation Husky commenced under layered command structures, Allied forces landing across Sicily with coordination tempered by mistrust. British leadership retained central authority, viewing the invasion as delicate undertaking requiring restraint. American units followed assigned corridors, expected to execute rather than improvise, reinforcing hierarchy embedded before first boots touched hostile shores. Planning conferences preceding landings reflected imbalance. British officers outlined objectives with firm certainty, Americans listened and complied. Maps emphasized phased advances and controlled junctions, limiting autonomy. Partnership existed formally, yet decision-making flowed predictably from experienced Empire commanders toward newer allies deemed energetic, but operationally immature. As beaches were secured, British commanders monitored progress cautiously, wary of overextension. American formations advanced efficiently, yet requests for expanded maneuver were delayed. Command channels slowed initiative, reinforcing perception that trust must be earned gradually. Early success did little to alter assumptions formed long before Sicily became battlefield. The invasion unfolded with impressive coordination, yet philosophical differences surfaced immediately. British units prioritized consolidation, Americans pushed reconnaissance aggressively. This contrast fueled concern among senior planners, who equated speed with vulnerability. Hierarchy therefore tightened, ensuring that aggressive impulses remained constrained beneath coalition discipline and carefully managed authority. American officers sensed constraints clearly, operational boundaries defined narrowly. Though objectives were met, opportunities appeared fleeting. British caution dominated interpretation of events, reinforcing belief that experience justified restraint. The partnership functioned smoothly, yet underlying doubt shaped every approval process, reinforcing layered supervision rather than shared confidence. Communication chains lengthened response times, requests traveling upward through established command echelons. British headquarters weighed implications carefully, balancing coalition harmony against perceived risk. Americans complied professionally, yet frustration simmered, as momentum seemed deliberately moderated to fit doctrinal comfort rather than battlefield realities emerging rapidly across Sicilian terrain. Operation Husky thus progressed deliberately, success measured through control rather than exploitation. British planners cited historical precedent, recalling disasters born from haste. Americans respected alliance discipline, yet quietly questioned whether modern mechanized forces required different thinking. Doubt persisted, sustained by hierarchy privileging caution over responsiveness during early operational phases. Logistical planning mirrored command philosophy, emphasizing secure supply over rapid thrusts. British staff controlled distribution nodes, ensuring predictability. Americans adapted efficiently, yet dependence reinforced subordination. Every convoy and objective reinforced lesson that partnership remained conditional, shaped by perceptions of readiness rather than demonstrated performance in evolving combat conditions. Despite smooth landings, trust remained theoretical. British leaders interpreted success as validation of control, not American competence. Reports emphasized discipline over initiative, reinforcing stereotypes. The invasion became proving ground, yet evaluation criteria favored adherence to plan, limiting opportunities for Americans to challenge assumptions through bold operational expression. Morale among American units remained high, confidence drawn from execution quality. Yet recognition lagged, filtered through hierarchical lenses. British praise remained measured, carefully phrased. The partnership functioned, but imbalance persisted, ensuring that operational credit flowed upward while responsibility remained shared, maintaining established power relationships within Allied command. As days passed, Sicilian terrain revealed complexity, demanding adaptability. Americans demonstrated flexibility, yet approvals constrained exploitation. British command remained cautious, prioritizing coalition safety. Doubt lingered, not from failure but from ingrained expectation that experience outweighed innovation, shaping every operational decision during Husky's formative stages. Operation Husky thus embodied alliance paradox, unity achieved alongside mistrust. Hierarchy preserved stability, yet suppressed initiative. The invasion succeeded tactically, but strategically reinforced assumptions that Americans must still prove themselves. This dynamic set conditions for future friction. as battlefield realities increasingly challenged inherited command philosophies and carefully guarded authority. Montgomery's operational design emerged from confidence built across earlier campaigns, emphasizing control of decisive geography. The Eastern Coastal Highway represented certainty, speed, and symbolism. Reserving that route ensured British forces occupied the narrative center, advancing visibly toward Messina while allies remained peripheral, reinforcing assumptions about leadership, competence, and rightful ownership of victory. The main road was not merely asphalt and milestones, it was strategic theater. Montgomery understood that history followed highways, cameras followed flags, and credit followed momentum. By claiming the best route, he secured logistical efficiency while denying Americans opportunity to demonstrate independent, operational brilliance within the most visible corridor of advance. British planning documents framed the decision as necessity, citing congestion risks and supply coordination. Yet alternatives offered to American units were narrow, mountainous, and slow. The imbalance was intentional, reflecting belief that decisive action required seasoned hands, while inexperienced allies could safely occupy secondary spaces without jeopardizing the campaign's outcome. Within headquarters, confidence bordered on certainty. Montgomery's staff viewed Sicily as extension of proven doctrine, deliberate pressure along predictable axes. Speed mattered less than inevitability. By monopolizing the highway, British command ensured battles unfolded on their terms, reinforcing methodical advance rather than unpredictable maneuver favored by more aggressive commanders. American officers recognized the symbolism immediately. Roads dictated tempo, tempo dictated headlines. Being pushed aside signaled diminished trust. Yet objections were muted, filtered through alliance etiquette. The design had been approved, and challenging it risked accusations of insubordination, further entrenching hierarchy beneath polite cooperation. Montgomery's confidence rested on arithmetic and precedent. Shorter distances, better roads, and controlled phases promised success. His belief that professionalism trumped aggression shaped every choice. Reserving the highway was logical within that worldview, ensuring British formations avoided unnecessary strain while advancing steadily toward the campaign's symbolic endpoint. The exclusion reshaped American deployment dramatically. Units already advancing inland were forced to reverse course, wasting energy and morale. Dust clouds marked retreating columns, a physical reminder of imposed subordination. Soldiers understood instinctively that opportunity had been reassigned, not lost through failure but through deliberate command preference. British leadership framed the decision calmly, emphasizing unity, yet unity flowed one direction. Americans adapted, accepting inferior routes while recalculating possibilities. Montgomery assumed compliance equaled agreement, overlooking how constrained forces often seek alternative paths to relevance, especially when ambition meets imposed limitation under competitive coalition conditions. The main road thus became dividing line between doctrine and improvisation. British forces advanced carefully, Americans recalibrated creatively. Montgomery believed control equaled victory, unaware that denial sometimes fuels innovation. By reserving the highway, he unintentionally invited challenge, transforming logistical decision into catalyst for rivalry. Operational reports emphasized progress, masking tension. British columns moved deliberately, encountering resistance yet confident in outcome. Meanwhile, American commanders studied maps obsessively, searching for ways around imposed boundaries. The road denied them became obsession, a symbol of withheld trust and an opportunity waiting beyond authorization. Montgomery's design succeeded tactically but faltered psychologically. It preserved British primacy while underestimating Allied ambition. Roads shape campaigns, but denial shapes resolve. By controlling the obvious path, British command failed to anticipate how determination thrives when constrained, particularly among forces eager to escape supporting roles. Thus the highway reserved for glory became paradox. Intended to secure narrative dominance, it instead sharpened competition. Montgomery trusted doctrine and distance, believing outcomes predetermined, yet warfare rewards adaptation. By claiming the road, he surrendered unpredictability, allowing rivals space to redefine success beyond intended design. Patton received the sideline mission with outward compliance, yet inward resentment hardened immediately. Guarding a flank implied passivity, observation, patience. For a commander rebuilding reputation, such orders felt like deliberate containment. He recognized the assignment as political theater, ensuring Americans remained useful without becoming visible, decisive, or independently successful actors. Headquarters language masked intention behind neutral phrasing: protect, secure, observe, support. Each verb reduced initiative while preserving hierarchy. Patton understood British confidence framed Americans as apprentices, not partners. The mission placed his army behind progress, literally and symbolically, forced to measure success by absence of failure rather than achievement alone. American staff officers prepared meticulous defensive plans, though threats barely existed. Maps showed empty Western spaces, minimal German presence, little strategic pressure. Sitting idle consumed morale faster than combat. Patton watched opportunity evaporate hourly, convinced inactivity would reinforce British assumptions that American energy required supervision, restraint, and experienced guidance alone. Patton's frustration stemmed not from risk avoidance but from wasted potential. His army was larger, fresher, aggressive. Being parked contradicted training emphasizing momentum and shock. He sensed history forming elsewhere while his forces waited. The sidelining threatened to define American identity as cautious auxiliaries, observers rather than drivers of events. Montgomery's confidence made the sidelining sharper. British briefings implied benevolence, guidance, patience. Patton heard condescension. The partnership resembled instruction, not collaboration. Every delayed order reinforced imbalance. American officers felt watched rather than trusted, evaluated rather than empowered. Their initiative filtered through another nation's doctrine and priorities during evolving operational circumstances. Patton concealed anger behind professionalism, yet privately seethed. He studied terrain relentlessly, memorizing alternatives, calculating distances, imagining speed. Constraints sharpened focus. Being sidelined clarified motivation. If denied prominence through planning, he would seek it through execution. The mission intended to limit him instead became catalyst for creative defiance and transformation. Soldiers sensed stagnation quickly. They dug positions, waited, listened to distant fighting. Victory elsewhere felt abstract. Rumors of British advances circulated, sharpening resentment. Men trained for movement found themselves static. Patton worried boredom would dull aggression, turning eager units into spectators conditioned to accept secondary importance within prolonged coalition operations. The sideline posture tested Patton's restraint. Impulse urged action, doctrine demanded obedience. He balanced compliance with preparation, waiting for ambiguity. Allied command structures relied on deference, yet ambiguity created space. Patton understood that initiative often emerged through interpretation, exploiting silence, delays, and cautious wording within orders issued by higher headquarters. American restraint contrasted sharply with Patton's temperament. He believed war rewarded audacity, not patience. The sidelines felt unnatural, a denial of his philosophy. Watching another army claim momentum intensified resolve. He vowed silently that circumstances would change, and when they did, hesitation would not define American response during the campaign. The mission's design assumed compliance would equal passivity. It misjudged ambition. Patton transformed limitation into observation, learning enemy patterns, logistics, tempo. While waiting, he prepared psychologically for rupture. The sidelines became classroom, sharpening instincts for the moment when authority blurred and opportunity demanded immediate exploitation without formal approval or warning. Within Allied headquarters, few noticed transformation underway. Reports showed stability, no crisis. Patton appeared compliant, yet beneath calm surfaces resolve hardened. Being kept watching convinced him victory narratives were contested terrain. If Americans wished respect, they would seize it operationally, not request it diplomatically through slow committee-driven negotiation processes. Thus the sidelined mission planted seeds of defiance. What appeared containment fostered determination. Patton internalized insult as fuel. The sidelines were temporary, he believed, a pause before eruption. When circumstances shifted, patience would vanish, replaced by motion, speed, and an unrelenting drive toward relevance within the unfolding Sicilian campaign context. Route 124 reassignment arrived quietly, yet its meaning thundered across American staffs, studying maps and understanding implied hierarchy. Montgomery requested exclusive control citing traffic efficiency, but officers recognized symbolism outweighing logistics within coalition command structures' realities. Road represented speed and victory. Removal signaled Americans would advance indirectly and accept obscurity without strategic recognition. Alexander approved the change, trusting Montgomery, believing British experience justified priority along decisive coastal axis routes during operations. American divisions already advancing were ordered backward, a countermarch draining energy and pride simultaneously from exhausted infantry formations. Dust clouds followed retreating columns. Humiliation settling as soldiers realized displacement served optics rather than necessity within alliances. Route denial transformed planning dispute into personal slight, challenging American dignity earned through bloodshed during early campaign stages. Patton interpreted logistics arguments as camouflage, concealing competitive intent behind procedural language within combined staff communications channels deliberately. Main highway possession equaled narrative control. Whoever advanced fastest would claim Sicily symbolically before global audiences judged outcomes. British confidence hardened into presumption, assuming Americans would comply despite resentment lingering from North African setbacks previously experienced. Forced rerouting wasted time, burning momentum crucial for mobile warfare during mountainous Sicilian terrain operations unfolding rapidly. Every reversed mile reinforced subordination, embedding insult within boots and muscles of exhausted American infantrymen marching southward again. Patton's anger sharpened calculation, turning humiliation into impetus for initiative across operational planning sessions conducted nightly with staff. He recognized obedience without imagination guaranteed irrelevance under coalition dynamics dominating Allied headquarters discussions shaped by British confidence. If denied the highway, alternative paths demanded exploitation through speed, audacity, endurance, deception, improvisation, risk, maneuver, resolve, audaciousness. Staff maps revealed Western routes neglected, mountainous, yet passable with aggression by determined commanders willing accept friction daily. Engineers could carve roads. Infantry could march longer. Armor could bypass resistance when leadership demanded relentless tempo continuously. Route 124 loss clarified opportunity paradoxically, narrowing focus towards speed, surprise, initiative, psychological shock, momentum, endurance, daring, improvisation. Montgomery underestimated insult magnitude, viewing Americans as manageable adjuncts within British-led operational hierarchy controlling Sicilian advances deliberately. The decision ignored morale physics, pride influencing endurance among troops, officers, staffs, allies, observers, journalists, politicians, families, nations. Soldiers march farther when respected, not sidelined within alliances, campaigns, coalitions, histories, memories, myths, legacies, narratives, wars, remembered. Route confiscation accelerated divergence between doctrines. Caution versus velocity shaping subsequent maneuvers, risks, tempos, casualties, outcomes, reputations, legacies. British method prized preparation. Americans valued movement through exploitation. Pursuit, audacity, improvisation, pressure, tempo, shock, endurance, resolve, speed. Route 124 symbolized this philosophical divide across coalition, commands, planning, execution, media, politics, memory, pride, ambition, rivalry, history. Patton reframed insult into mission, determined to demonstrate capability through action. Speed, daring, endurance, surprise, maneuver, persistence, results. The sidelining backfired strategically, unleashing competitive energy within American formations, staffs, leadership, culture, identity, pride, momentum, confidence, purpose. Every denied mile demanded compensation elsewhere through acceleration. Improvisation, initiative, audacity, risk, endurance, pressure, maneuver, surprise, tempo, resolve. Allied unity masked rivalry. Decisions carried emotional weight within headquarters. Briefings, corridors, maps, orders, silences, glances, pauses, tensions. Route 124 became fault line, exposing trust fractures between partners, doctrines, cultures, expectations, ambitions, narratives, pride, memory, respect. Such fractures influence outcomes beyond terrain, affecting morale, speed, initiative, adaptation, endurance, leadership, legitimacy, memory, myth, history, perception. Patton awaited ambiguity, knowing opportunity arises there within orders. Pauses, miscommunications, hesitations, assumptions. routines, doctrines, habits, cultures, coalitions. The highway lost sharpened readiness, not restraint among American commanders, planners, engineers, drivers, infantry, armor, artillery, medics, leaders. Insult clarified stakes. Respect required action through movement, speed, daring, endurance, shock, momentum, persistence, initiative, adaptation, courage, results. Thus, Route 124 removal unintentionally ignited transformation within American operational identity. Confidence, doctrine, ambition, culture, momentum, resolve, purpose. What intended control produced defiance and creativity across staffs, units, commanders, planners, engineers, drivers, infantry, armor, leaders. Allies. Strategy turned insult reshaped the campaign through unexpected speed. Initiative, rivalry, momentum, adaptation, audacity, endurance, outcomes, memory, legacy. Western Sicily simmered beneath sun and restraint. American formations held ground assigned defensively, watching opportunity drift northward daily. Orders emphasized patience, flank security, observation, containment, virtues taught as discipline within coalition warfare doctrine. Yet inactivity gnawed morale. Soldiers trained for advance sensed time slipping while others shaped campaign narrative elsewhere. Patton paced headquarters relentlessly. Maps spread like accusations across tables. Routes mocked stillness. Reports confirmed minimal German presence westward. No serious counterattack threats materializing against idle American positions. Every hour guarding emptiness felt squandered, especially as British columns crept deliberately along privileged eastern highways. Infantry units dug in unnecessarily. Heat fatigue, boredom eroding sharpness faster than combat ever could. Men asked why they waited. Answers referenced alliance harmony, strategic patience, higher purpose abstractions. Such explanations rang hollow against visible dust columns marking British movement toward objectives Americans were forbidden pursue. Patton recognized danger of stagnation. Armies lose edge without motion, spirit dulls before weapons. He feared becoming scenery. Background force enabling others' glory while Americans learned passivity. The waiting contradicted everything drilled into him about exploiting success relentlessly before enemies. Reorganized defenses. Staff officers echoed concern quietly, noting logistics idle, units rested excessively. Momentum dissipating unnoticed. Western Sicily offered roads, towns, ports undefended, inviting occupation rather than observation. Maps showed Palermo reachable through daring movement, an opportunity ignored by cautious adherence to assigned mission boundaries. British doctrine prized deliberate buildup, patience equated professionalism, haste invited disaster memory. Americans valued initiative. Seizing openings before permission hardened into prohibition. Cultural friction surfaced subtly, contrasting philosophies shaping tolerance for inactivity under alliance compromise pressures. Patton sought authorization diplomatically, presenting logic rather than defiance. Proposing reconnaissance in force westward, Alexander hesitated, bound by Montgomery's primacy, yet acknowledged wasted American potential glaringly obvious. Ambiguous approval emerged. Neither explicit permission nor denial, fertile ground for decisive interpretation by aggressive commanders. Waiting transformed into anticipation. Restraint coiled like spring within American ranks, sensing impending release. Orders remained cautious. Language vague. Room existed for momentum exploitation once movement began. Patton understood ambiguity as opportunity, exploiting silence between instructions where initiative survives bureaucratic caution. Morale shifted instantly. Preparations intensified quietly. Engines serviced, supply routes recalculated, marching orders rehearsed. Men responded eagerly. Fatigue forgotten as purpose returned. Waiting had clarified hunger for movement, proving idleness intolerable to forces built around action speed pressure. Western Sicily thus became crucible, frustration forging resolve stronger than initial enthusiasm. The pause exposed limits of alliance patience, highlighting divergence between restraint and aggression doctrines. From enforced stillness emerged determination to move faster than expectations allowed, once barriers loosened even slightly. Patton internalized lesson. Respect follows motion, not permission. Relevance earned through results, not compliance alone. Waiting taught what exclusion felt like, sharpening desire to demonstrate worth decisively. When movement finally came, it would be relentless, fueled by weeks of constrained ambition bottled behind orders. The decision formed quietly, Framed as reconnaissance yet driven by impatience hardened through enforced inactivity, Patton selected Palermo not for orders, but for opportunity, distance daring him openly. 72 hours defied estimates, terrain mocked speed, doctrine warned restraint, yet momentum demanded release immediately. Western routes twisted through mountains, narrow roads punishing engines, men, nerves, endurance simultaneously. Staff calculations predicted weeks, not days, required for such advance under cautious planning assumptions. Patton dismissed projections, valuing shock velocity surprise over comfort certainty historically favored by British doctrine. Divisions received orders emphasizing urgency, movement day and night, rest secondary to arrival. Truscott's infantry spearheaded trained relentlessly for rapid marching beyond standard pace limitations. Armor followed where possible, engineers blasting paths when roads collapsed beneath unexpected American pressure. Doctrine cautioned against outrunning supply, stretching flanks, inviting counterattack. Patton accepted risk knowingly, believing speed itself mitigated danger through enemy paralysis, confusion, hesitation. Momentum became shield, audacity substitute for preparation, confidence replacing layered contingencies favored elsewhere. Italian defenders encountered columns where none were expected, surrendering often without resistance. German units withdrew methodically, unprepared for Americans appearing deep behind assumed boundaries. The advance felt unreal. Maps lagged behind movement, headquarters struggling to track units racing forward. Sleep vanished, meals improvised, exhaustion ignored as miles disappeared beneath boots and tracks. Men marched beyond doctrine limits, driven by pride and anger accumulated during weeks of waiting. Every mile felt like reclaiming dignity denied by sidelining decisions earlier imposed quietly. Patton drove constantly, visiting lead elements, demanding reports measured in distance, not casualties. When commanders hesitated citing fatigue, he reminded them rest awaited Palermo. Pressure was relentless, but shared purpose sustained endurance where orders alone never could. Engineers became heroes, carving switchbacks, bridging ravines, keeping tempo alive. Supply officers scavenged captured depots, improvising fuel ammunition distribution without formal schedules. Logistics bent under urgency, adapting dynamically rather than dictating pace through rigid planning. 72 hours compressed weeks in the blur, night convoys, headlights blazing. Mountains echoing engines. Doctrine dissolved under reality, replaced by instinctive pursuit of advantage. The gamble unfolded visibly, proving aggressive maneuver could substitute for procedural certainty under right conditions. Palermo loomed sooner than believed, disbelief spreading through advancing ranks. Enemy resistance crumbled under speed, psychological collapse preceding physical defeat. Arrival felt inevitable only in retrospect. During movement it seemed reckless, relentless, unstoppable simultaneously. The gamble validated Patton's conviction. Speed rewrote possibility boundaries once deemed immutable. American forces demonstrated capacity beyond assigned roles, reshaping alliance perceptions irrevocably. 72 hours redefined reputation, proving doctrine bends before will. Momentum, audacity, endurance combined. Mountain roads punished machinery, nerves, lungs. Yet American columns refused deceleration under Patton's relentless expectations. Grades twisted sharply. Dust blinded drivers, engines overheated constantly. Still momentum ruled decision-making. Speed became discipline, enforced through leadership pressure rather than mechanical comfort traditionally respected by cautious doctrines. Infantry advanced with unusual rhythm. Truscott's troopers practicing accelerated marches despite elevation heat strain. 5 miles per hour bursts replaced standard pace, collapsing distance aggressively. This method exhausted men quickly, yet arrival ahead of expectation rewarded suffering with psychological advantage. Towns awoke to unexpected presence. American helmets appearing where schedules predicted absence days later. Italian garrisons surrendered en masse, stunned by velocity contradicting intelligence assumptions. Resistance dissolved before organization. Shock achieving results artillery might have required costly preparation to secure. German rearguards attempted delay. Demolition charges prepared too late. American engineers improvised bypasses. Tanks detoured across fields, infantry scaled slopes. Speed denied defenders time, forcing withdrawal rather than coordinated defense, unraveling planned resistance incrementally. Supplies struggled behind spearheads, trucks navigating same treacherous roads under constant pressure. Officers scavenged fuel ammunition locally, capturing depots, requisitioning vehicles, improvising distribution creatively. Logistics followed movement rather than directing it. Inversion shocking planners steeped in procedure. Mountain nights erased distinctions between advance and rest, movement continuous under starlight. Men slept in trucks briefly, resumed marching without complaint. Fatigue existed, but urgency overshadowed pain, pride sustaining effort beyond expected endurance thresholds. Patton's presence amplified tempo, commanders fearing his disappointment more than enemy fire. Orders emphasized arrival times, not cautious alignment. Risk accepted openly, because hesitation meant losing initiative hard-won through exhausting pace. British observers struggled to interpret reports, disbelief coloring intelligence summaries. Americans moved faster on worse roads, violating assumptions underpinning coalition planning models. Doctrine predicted stalls, instead momentum compounded, creating operational snowball effect across western Sicily. Enemy communications collapsed under uncertainty. Units unsure where Americans actually were. False reports multiplied, defenders retreating prematurely. Speed functioned as psychological weapon, distorting enemy perception beyond physical destruction inflicted directly. Mountains amplified impact. Terrain expected to slow became stage for audacity demonstration. By defying geography, Americans redefined operational possibilities, undermining long-held beliefs about movement limitations. The landscape itself seemed conquered by momentum, not merely traversed reluctantly. Success bred confidence, units trusting capability to overcome obstacles through motion. This trust reinforced speed, creating self-sustaining cycle of aggression. Each obstacle passed validated doctrine abandonment, encouraging further risk acceptance under Patton's relentless push. Sicily absorbed lesson brutally, velocity reshaped campaign dynamics permanently. American momentum shocked allies enemies alike, altering perceptions overnight. Speed in mountains proved decisive, rewriting reputations forged through daring endurance rather than cautious calculation. Both armies advanced toward Messina, yet their objectives differed, and pride quietly competed with orders. Montgomery pushed along Route 124. Measured, deliberate, believing preparation guaranteed victory. Patton advanced westward, improvising, accelerating, exploiting every terrain advantage ignored by cautious doctrines imposed upon coalition allies. Reports crossed headquarters, tracking miles gained, losses suffered. Enemy encountered. British calculations emphasized steady progress, supply security, minimal risk, psychological comfort in methodical operations. Americans measured success through distance covered, speed maintained, towns seized, enemy surprised, morale boosted continuously. Italian garrisons faltered, Germans retreated incrementally, delaying both forces. Psychological weight pressed on British, as news of American advance trickled into communications channels deliberately slow. Observers noted unprecedented American tempo, questioning assumptions about coalition hierarchy and operational predictability in joint operations. The race remained unofficial, yet understood by everyone on both sides of command. Maps became instruments of speculation. Every mountain pass, narrow road, port, river crossing marked for timing, exploitation, maneuver. Allied coordination became secondary to personal initiative and momentum. Patton versus Montgomery, subtly yet unmistakably. Montgomery relied on doctrine and controlled tempo. Engineers reinforcing roads, artillery positioned to support slow advance. Patton ignored caution, improvising paths where none existed, relying on speed and audacity rather than methodical accumulation of force. Each mile gained reinforced contrast, patience clashing against aggression, doctrine against initiative, British pride versus American resolve. Communication carried both orders and anxiety. British officers frustrated at what seemed chaotic American strategy. Reports highlighted distances ahead, speed unanticipated, predictions broken, assumptions invalidated by American audacity and calculated improvisation. Patton's staff understood the strategic implications. Speed alone could claim the prize before formal authorization permitted recognition. Every village captured, every bridge crossed by Americans increased urgency, forcing British columns to accelerate despite doctrine limitations. Soldiers felt the race personally, aware history might judge them based on sequence of arrival rather than actual combat intensity. Morale intertwined with pride, initiative rewarded beyond orders, energy maintained through challenge rather than rest, determination replacing fatigue. The terrain amplified rivalry, mountains delaying British cautiously, rivers forcing detours, roads congested, yet Americans found ways through obstacles. Armor, infantry moved in synchronized chaos, improvising supply chains, bypassing standard checkpoints, defying procedural norms without formal approval. Each obstacle became opportunity, each delay a chance to exploit terrain creatively, turning constraint into advantage during the unofficial contest. Allied observers noted impact on enemy, who struggled to anticipate tempo, movement, sequence. Psychological pressure intensified as two armies converged on Messina, timing uncertain, consequences enormous. The race defined perception, shaping reputations, setting stage for both operational and symbolic victory in Sicily. Patton's westward thrust forced Montgomery to accelerate, abandoning patience, risking supply, casualties. Terrain challenges. British calculations stressed security, predictability, control, yet Americans redefined possibilities through daring mobility, improvisation, relentless pace. Coalition dynamics shifted subtly, revealing how initiative, momentum, and audacity can outweigh hierarchy and doctrine under real operational conditions. Messina approached simultaneously from different directions, victory within reach, yet undefined until arrival. Each column sensed urgency. Every mile mattered, pride and anticipation pressing heavily on commanders, soldiers alike. The unofficial race elevated the Sicilian campaign from routine operation to narrative contest, shaping memory, legacy, and perceptions of Allied capabilities. Success relied not only on planning but on exploiting ambiguity, improvising where permission lacked, maintaining relentless pace. Patton's forces acted as if the prize could be seized before formal authorization, an operational gamble paying dividends in both speed and morale. Two armies converged, but the outcome would hinge on momentum, audacity, and ability to transcend expected constraints. American columns reached Messina under sweltering August sun, engines whirring, boots pounding, and nerves taut with anticipation. The city's gates lay undefended, yet silence hung heavy, carrying weight heavier than combat, reflecting months of sidelining, skepticism, and expectation within coalition command structures. Soldiers felt vindication before engagement, realizing their speed and audacity had already rewritten assumptions imposed upon them. Patton surveyed streets, noting American flags raised, the port secured, and Italian civilians peering from windows in disbelief. British officers arrived shortly after, eyes widening at evidence Americans had arrived first, occupying positions they were expected merely to support. The quiet astonishment communicated more than words ever could, a statement of capability and independence before coalition hierarchy. Staff officers documented locations, logistics, captured equipment, prisoners, yet the psychological victory eclipsed all material measures. Months of waiting, planning, recalculating routes, and improvising supply had culminated in instant validation of initiative over procedure. Audacity over caution. The Third Army had not merely moved, it had redefined what American forces could achieve under pressure. Montgomery's arrival hours later revealed frustration carefully masked behind professionalism and maintained composure. British calculations assumed orderly adherence to doctrine. American improvisation had invalidated those assumptions, producing results that metrics alone could not justify. The contrast in tempo highlighted cultural differences between armies, shaped by doctrine, pride, and operational philosophy. Soldiers stood quietly, sharing the moment, aware of history observing them. This was more than a city captured. The silence itself carried meaning, proof that Americans were not junior partners, amateurs, or passive observers in coalition warfare. Patton's gamble had succeeded, demonstrating initiative, speed, and decisiveness could overcome procedural constraint and hierarchical limitation. Civilians offered subdued recognition, while prisoners understood surrender was inevitable before audacious force rather than protracted engagement. Every step taken across Sicilian terrain reinforced lessons learned from frustration, denied opportunities, and sidelined orders, now converted into achievement. Preparation, improvisation, and relentless pace validated American doctrine of aggressive exploitation of opportunity, a contrast to British caution. Headquarters communications relayed reports, but tone shifted subtly, conveying astonishment rather than compliance, reflecting recalibration of assumptions about American capacity. Patton's staff absorbed pride quietly, knowing what had been dismissed as reckless had become essential. legitimized by results and timing. The American Army had claimed symbolic and operational authority simultaneously, cementing reputation among allies and within its own ranks. Victory at Messina was measured not solely in miles gained or prisoners taken, but in recognition of initiative exercised boldly. The silence that greeted arrival resonated across planning rooms, corridors, and reports, rewriting narrative of American inferiority permanently in coalition memory. Competence, decisiveness, and audacity had eclipsed caution, ensuring the American Army's identity evolved beyond observer status into a force commanding respect. Patton reflected briefly. Knowing future operations would carry weight of precedent established that August morning in Sicily. Third Army's momentum, audacity, and speed had proven doctrinal assumptions could be challenged. Hierarchy balanced against action, innovation rewarded through execution. Messina became more than objective. It symbolized transition from subordination to partnership, from marginalization to respect, from skepticism to acknowledgement. Soldiers dispersed through streets, securing logistics, supplies, and communications. Yet the psychological imprint remained dominant, overshadowing all practical details. British officers adjusted calculations. Morale subtly shifted, and American confidence radiated throughout subsequent operations, creating new expectations for speed, initiative, and operational creativity. The silence confirmed what no parade or order could. The Americans had arrived, fully capable, independent, and undeniably formidable in coalition warfare. The city itself became emblem of transformation, where months of perceived limitation gave rise to rapid achievement. Every observer understood the implications. American forces would no longer be parked, sidelined, or underestimated in future operations across Europe. Messina's capture embodied proof that audacity, speed, and initiative could challenge assumptions, reshaping both practical campaign planning and strategic perception. In the quiet after occupation, soldiers realized accomplishment transcended maps or orders. It reshaped legacy, reputation, and historical memory. The Third Army had seized opportunity denied by doctrine, transforming frustration into triumph through relentless action, speed, and improvisation. August 17, 1943, became milestone of American emergence, ending perceived inferiority, redefining capability, and establishing precedent for all future Allied campaigns in Europe.